I don't know if I'll ever forgive Fox for what they did to Joss Whedon's 2002 sci-fi western series, Firefly. The tragedy of errors has been well documented, so I won't repeat the tale here. Still, my heart aches for what could have been, if only the show had been allowed to finish its first season. I broke down the Firefly movie already, yet this amazing pilot episode has been begging for a deep dive since the first time it blazed onto my screen. My genre rotation has landed on sci-fi again, so I took my opportunity. The timestamps for every sequence can be found in the comment section for your viewing pleasure. Now, let's begin. We start, as always, with a focus on our protagonist, specifically their personality, their inner conflict, and their situation. Mal personifies relentless hope in the face of opposition, and fights the progress of a centralized government alongside Zoe, then suffers the agony and despair of defeat. Next, we examine where, why, and how our protagonist exists in their world, with a focus on why they don't quite fit in. Mal survives as a scavenger and smuggler, and he commands a civilian crew instead of soldiers, who all exist outside the respectable existence of the Alliance. Then a brief event happens, one that's never happened before. It's destined to lead all the characters away from their status quo. An Alliance cruiser detects the heat signature of Serenity, complicating their deal with Badger, which leads us to examine the effect of that something new to the status quo, specifically what's different now and what remains the same. Mal orders his crew to run away rather than fight, and they escape the reach of the Alliance with cargo intact. We move along to the discovery that things are less than ideal, or else we explore how badly things are. Both scenarios are common. Mal notices the government stamp on the cargo, which heightens the stakes. Wash, who represents the health of the ship, comments on their fuel and supply concerns. Then Zoe senses her captain is acting strange, while Wash introduces our first hint to the crew's internal discord. Next, our characters dedicate their effort to a specified goal, and this is always narrower in scope than what the third act will demand. We meet post-coital Inara, who personifies the unexpected political morality of the story. Then, an extensive montage demonstrates the cultural melting pot of Eavesdown docks, a clue to our sordid cast of misfits, while Mal manages the few resources they have to stay flying. Then we run through a brief checklist of the main story elements that we can expect during this journey. A ship full of strong personalities, the Alliance as a boundary-making antagonist, Wild West business ethics and politics, and of course, Mal's fight for independent survival. Which brings us to the brief events that launches our characters into the wild jungle of the second act. It's also called the oh shit moment. Badger kicks Mal to the curb, with a threat about law enforcement nipping at his heels. Oh shit. We follow our characters as they discover the new rules and expectations of their journey. These are always distinct to the narrative at play. Kaylee, who personifies innocence, recruits Book as a passenger, who represents traditional morality, while the core crew discuss their limited options and depleted treasury. Then Reavers are mentioned in passing, which will soon act as our second boundary-making antagonist. Next, our characters showcase their ability to grow and progress, and this is typically an external or physical beat, rather than internal or emotional. Fresh supplies and paying passengers all board Serenity, a small breath of relief, and Inara arrives and completes the crew's roster. Then Serenity departs with a hopeful mission, while the crew play their roles as host to the newcomers. Then our characters face legitimate and understandable reasons to deviate from their stated convictions, agendas, or desires. The holy man meets the sex worker, and the morality mixed bag is visualized, while Mal's not-so-secret affection for Inara is there for everyone to see. Then we're given our first hint that unseen cargo is never what we expect, and Mal makes his anger toward Faith clear and undeniable. We endure the anxiety as our characters face an escalation of problems and complications. Simon voices uncomfortable questions about the cover story. Then the division between Mal and Jayne appears to widen further, and Simon raises even more suspicions by inquiring a little too much. Next, our characters evolve internally or emotionally, and they do this by using elements of the plot or story which they've gathered and learned so far. Inara and Book confer, and we witness the peaceful coexistence of conflicting morality, and he calls out the mutual attraction between her and Mal, which they both appear to hide. Then Wash panics as he reveals a Fed on board Serenity. Then our journey-weary characters come to terms with their ongoing struggles. Moments and elements of the first act are used to gauge their progress. The Act 1 threat of the Alliance has infiltrated the ship, and the Act 1 warrant proves a fun misdirection. Then Act 1 Wild West politics create a standoff that isn't calming down, which results in a brief event that strikes at our protagonist's core conflict. The Fed shoots Kaylee, endangering the crew's only glimmer of innocence, and there's no turning back from here. We receive needed answers alongside our characters, which relate to both their external journeys and their internal conflicts. Book acts as the moral compass and prevents Jayne from crossing into brutality, while the dangers of Alliance involvement in any of their affairs is laid out for all of them to recognize. Next, our characters complete their narrow scope objective, yet discover that their victory is shallow or altogether meaningless and must complete a wider scope objective. Mal and Simon stabilize Kaylee's condition, but she's still unconscious. Simon's crate is finally opened, but it only deepens his mystery. Then Simon proves himself a protective brother, but he's a fugitive from the Alliance. Then our characters face an existential conflict that wounds their sense of self and identity or their physical journey. River's backstory reveals the inhuman abuse of the Alliance, and Mal counters with their current situation, with the fugitives and Fed aboard Serenity. Then he pushes his crew forward despite the mounting chaos. We celebrate with our protagonist in light of an undeniable win, which is always related to the rebirth in some way. Mal punches Simon, and it's the first time since the war that he's willing to fight instead of retreat. Then Jayne interrogates the Fed and discovers their identities are safe. Next, our characters suffer a grand loss. This is always connected to their newfound inability to quit their journey. Reavers finally make their appearance, to everyone's mortal terror. Then Zoe explains their animalistic savagery, were they to capture a ship. Then Mal hints to conflicts and yet more war coming in future seasons. Then we experience a thematic freefall, as the main story elements are ramped up and thrown into upheaval. Mal reveals how close they really are to being dead in the water. Kaylee pushes him to believe in the humanity of others, while Simon scrambles with his impossible situation as best he can. Then the crew's internal durability is demonstrated in the darkest of ways, and Wild West business ethics and politics provide a glimmer of hope, which forces us into a brief event that robs our protagonist of seemingly any hope of success. To complete the deal and get paid, Mal agrees to walk into an assassination attempt. We watch our characters realize that they cannot return to their first act selves, and they turn to face the wider scope objective. Mal and Zoe confirm the likelihood of ambush at the rendezvous spot. Then the Fed attacks Book, officially placing the Alliance against the moral core of Serenity, while Mal and Zoe navigate another tense standoff. Next, our characters use the major swings of the story and their personal journeys to move towards the climax. The Fed snatches River, which has always been a threat, while the deal turns sour as Patience reveals her dubious approach to business. Mal completes the trade at gunpoint, taking the much-needed money. Then Chekhov's Reaver attack finally pays off, as promised. Then the final confrontation plays out, between our protagonist and characters against the antagonistic force. Simon debates killing the Fed to keep River safe, but Mal takes the shot instead and eliminates one of the Boundary antagonists. Wash pilots Serenity like a pro, yet the Reavers gain. Then Mal decides that something clever would work best against something so blunt, which culminates in a brief moment where our protagonist finally, and oftentimes metaphorically, overcomes their place in the Act 1 status quo. Wash and the crew pull off a crazy Ivan, and they evade the Reaver ship, their other Boundary antagonist. We experience the direct aftermath of the climax. This can give our characters a moment to reflect on the situation, or else wind down the action with a coda. The crew celebrates their win and their survival, and they finally have enough money for repairs and fuel. Next, we touch base with additional characters, typically to contrast them against the new status quo. Book suffers the loss of his sense of binary morality, as the holy man is comforted by the sex worker. Then the Tam siblings look forward to a frighteningly uncertain future, and Jayne alludes to a for-hire attitude for his loyalty toward Mal. Then we conclude with a tight focus on our protagonist, specifically to contrast them against how we met them at the opening. Mal puts his faith in the righteousness of Simon's cause. Then he braces for a begrudgingly hopeful future. And there you have it. Joss Whedon's 2002 sci-fi western, The Firefly pilot episode, adheres perfectly to the 29-point story structure every step of the way, and it demonstrates the effectiveness of archetypal characters in storytelling. Now, let's move on from a soldier turned captain haunted by battle to an arms dealer turned superhero haunted by battle, with my next dive into the ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe. Join me next time for Shane Black's 2013 Phase 2 launch title, Iron Man 3. As always, thank you so much for your time. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and consider commenting on and sharing this video to help the channel find its audience. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll talk at you next time.